Good morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR and welcome back to another video. We have just reached the 1 year mark for Pokemon Masters, or Pokemon Masters EX as it will soon be renamed, a mobile game that I'm sure most of you either played or heard about at some point, as it did cause quite a stir upon its reveal last year. After all, a gacha game featuring popular characters from throughout the history of Pokemon is bound to turn some heads. That's not to say that the idea sat well with everyone though. Most people I know in person just played up through the main story, said yup, it's a gacha game, and proceeded to never touch it ever again, as you can plainly see by me scrolling through my friends list here. And yeah, that was fair. This game was very lacking in content when it first launched, similar to how when Pokemon Go first launched, the only things you could do were catch Pokemon, hatch eggs, battle gyms, and that's about it. Now, I'm not a big mobile gamer by any means, it's simply just not up my alley for a lot of things. I mean, I had Minecraft Pocket Edition back in the day, and that's about it as far as games that don't have Pokemon in the title go for me. So I'm not sure if it's normal for most mobile games to launch with so little content, but if it's not, then I gotta say, Masters didn't make a great first impression. The story was pretty short and repetitive, the gameplay was pretty one-dimensional, there wasn't much to do beyond grinding into oblivion or hoping that you'd pull an amazing new character from a pretty limited pool, and apparently it didn't run well on a number of mobile devices. Fortunately, I stuck it out and continued to play the game till this very day, because not much later the development team completely changed staff, and honestly, these new people are wonderful. Not only are they incredibly transparent with their future visions for the game, but they're very communicative, and they seem to value community feedback a great deal. Not a lot of people know this, but there's an actual in-game menu where you can send feedback directly to the devs, which at least in my experience is something you normally have to go much further out of your way to do with most other games. I think Pokemon Masters is in much better hands now than it was originally, and the game has taken some pretty great strides in the past year. But we'll get to all that a little later. Because the first major thing I want to highlight about Pokemon Masters, even when it was under the old dev team, is the attention to detail in a lot of the characters. Easily, this is the most charming part of the game. It feels like a game crafted by dedicated Pokemon superfans. A lot of characters strike familiar poses, echoing back to the sprite-based era of Pokemon, and subtly reference a lot of things from the games that they originated from. The characters all feel like natural extensions of their original selves. Even the originally silent protagonists like Hilda and Rosa act like you'd expect them to. Sync pair stories also delve a little deeper into the backstories of a lot of the underdeveloped characters, particularly gym leaders and Elite Four members. And sometimes you even get shockingly comedic moments like Red speaking for the first time, claiming that he doesn't need words to understand his Pokemon. I think the bigger of a Pokemon fan you are, the more you'll appreciate this game for how well it keeps all of its characters intact, while also expanding on them. Sadly, the only downside is, if you're into Pokemon lore and fitting timeline pieces together, that's not really gonna work here. There's just too many conflicting designs from different generations, so you can't really pinpoint an exact time and be like, yeah, they're all canonically meeting right here between Black 2 and Ultra Sun, because it just really doesn't work. You'd be much better off just not putting any thought into it at all. Although now that I mentioned it, you're probably thinking about it a lot and it's gonna bother you for the rest of this video. Good, suffer with me then. By the way, in case you're totally out of the loop, sync pair is the term used in-game to describe the pairing of a trainer and one of their Pokemon. In battle, sync pairs function by using both Pokemon moves and trainer skills. It's pretty straightforward. Sync pairs, as like in most gacha games, are sorted into categories ranging from 3-star to 5-star, except for the 1 and 2-star Pokemon that hatch from eggs raised by the protagonist. They also fall into one of 3 classifications: Strike, Support, and Tech, which we will discuss a little bit later. Most gym leaders and miscellaneous trainers fit into the 3-star category, final gym leaders, Elite Four members, and Frontier Brains make up the bulk of the 4-star units, and 5 stars are reserved for protagonists and champions. Or I should say, were reserved. Yeah, ever since they started adding new sync pairs late last year, the vast majority of them have been 5-star units. The first ones added were Blue, Lyra, Hilbert, and Hilda. Okay, no problem so far, but then Elisa comes along and breaks the entire trend by being a 5-star unit. And from what I've heard, she's not even in the same league as most other 5-star units, so I can only imagine they do this to drum up hype and make people spend money on a unit they think they'll never be lucky enough to pull again. Which is accurate sometimes. Now, Cygnus Pseudo-Lisa, let me tell you, is actually pretty good, so she gets a pass. But by this point, pretty much the entire classification system has been soiled, so it's best to just ignore it, really. But you know who they did add later on who isn't a 5-star unit? Professor Oak and Mew, two of the most legendary names in the Pokemon franchise, and they're a 3-star because you get them for free. I see how it is. This isn't a huge problem, I understand why they do it, it's just a teensy bit bothersome to see how oversaturated 5-star units have become when in all honesty, there are some 3 and 4-star units who can put in just as much work with the right builds. When it comes to pulling sync pairs, the rates are usually as follows: 73% for 3 stars, 20% for 4 stars, and 7% for 5-star units. Like I said before, I'm not a huge mobile gamer or gacha game player, so I wasn't too sure how these rates stacked up next to other similar games. So I asked some friends who play Fire Emblem Heroes, Dragalia Lost, and a handful of lesser-known mobile gachas about the rates in those games, and I was pretty shocked at the results. It seems like 7% for a 5-star unit is pretty dang generous. Now the big question is, does Masters balance this out by offering you less of the in-game currency to pull units than most other gachas? That I couldn't answer as confidently. Some days you log into Masters, especially during events, play through the new courses, and get rewarded with hundreds or even thousands of gems. Other days you log in and you get a 1-star training manual. Come on DNA, that wasn't even useful to me on day 1. Doing the absolute bare minimum, you used to get 30 gems per day and 300 per week if you accomplish the assigned missions, which would result in 26,550 gems per year. Just recently though, the 300 per week was removed, and instead you now get 80 gems per day for completing the missions, which means the rate has been slightly buffed to 29,200 gems per year. I was personally hoping for 100 gems a day, but this is fine, at least we're getting more in the long term. Now as you can see here, I actually managed to save up to 70,000 gems, and this was only in the last 7 months. I would say I actually spent about 15,000 gems rolling for characters like Serena and Steven though, so if you do absolutely everything, I would say it's definitely possible to get well over 100,000 gems in a year. Keep in mind that one normal roll costs 300 gems. If someone wants to work out that math compared to other gacha games in the comment section, please tell me, I would love to know what the results are. I stopped being good at math a very long time ago. But while we're still on the surface, I say the surface, but this is the 5th page of the script, there is one other thing that's been a constant for Pokemon Master's entire lifespan, and that is the amazing soundtrack. Now the battle music in this game aren't really remixes, I would say they're more like reimaginings. Each battle theme starts off sounding like the original, and then it transitions to something completely new before going back to another memorable part of the original theme. Some of the music experiments with combining multiple themes, like the Unova Gym Leader theme also uses snippets of the low health music in Gym Leader's last Pokemon theme, which just puts a great big smile on my face. Zinnia's theme, which I wholeheartedly believe is one of the best rearrangements, uses both her theme and the standard Hoenn Trainer battle theme, and it just works really well for some reason. Steven and Wallace, who had the same champion battle theme in the core games, now have slightly differing arrangements that better fit both of their characters. And last but not least, they turned Jigglypuff's song into its own battle theme called Jigglypunk. You cannot make this crap up. A mobile game has no right to have such a banger soundtrack. I think it's unironically one of the best Pokemon soundtracks out there. Just like with the characters, I think the biggest Pokemon fans will appreciate this aspect the most. I had to mention it. The game has a main story, but it's not really anything you get excited about. It's pretty much what you'd expect out of your average mobile game. You just run around gathering sync pairs to form a team and win the Pokemon Masters League. You'll occasionally run the Team Break and other minor characters like Paulo and Lier, who are all about as interesting as my college Zoom lectures. Ironically, the main story is probably the weakest part of the game. It's just the straightforward grind of mostly underpowered trainers that you could finish in an afternoon. I would say there isn't really a battle that forces you to think on your feet until you reach Hilbert, Hilda, and Charon, which is all the way back in Chapter 18. For the first 17 chapters, you can pretty much just tie your opponent's shoelaces together and you'll beat them quite easily. But I guess it does depend on the units you pull and how hard you grind. The main story still isn't finished, by the way. The Masters League arc is trudging along about as fast as your average Route 217 adventure. Anyway, I think it's finally about time to talk about some of the new additions and revisions they've made over the past year. One thing I give the devs a lot of credit for is that they've balanced the game very well with their new additions. And when I say balancing, I mean mostly just making previously underpowered units better over time, because some of the new stuff they're churning out now is pretty ridiculous. Like Red having moves that never miss on top of a King Crimson time skip ability, but that's just Red. I think I'd be disappointed if he wasn't comically broken in some way. Sync grids were one of the first major additions to give a lot of utility to previously very underwhelming sync pairs. The protagonist and Pikachu, along with Misty, Skyla, and Flannery, are notably some 3-star units who gained a lot of usefulness through the additions of their sync grids. Sync grids are unique for every unit and have a variety of different branches for you to choose from. They aren't on every unit yet, but odds are there will be eventually. Now we'll finally get to talk about the classifications a bit more. Upon release, sync pairs that fell into the strike or support categories were typically seen as much better than the ones in the tech category, as almost all the battles in the game tended to be very short, favoring pure offense with support characters lending some occasional stat buffs. But through sync grids and the addition of longer-lasting challenges such as the Legendary Arena and the Battle Villa, tech units have arguably become some of the best in the game since the debuffs they grant typically mean more over the course of longer fights. The only downside I see to sync grids is that it can make pulling certain units underwhelming if you know in the back of your mind that you have to pull them at least 1 or 2 more times to unlock their full potential. But I suppose on the opposite side of the spectrum, that makes it less disappointing to pull the same 5-star unit over and over again, except Hilbert, who I keep pulling over and over again when he doesn't even have a sync grid yet. But in addition to the balancing brought in by sync grids, new features like the Battle Villa and Legendary Arena also give you the opportunity to utilize way more sync pairs than you normally would. For a long time, I exclusively used Red, Phoebe, and Skyla for all my standard battles because that was what worked easiest. But these new endurance challenges have allowed me to make use of a much wider variety of characters and come up with better strategies than just spamming Heatwave to kill all my enemies at once. And they're only going to keep expanding on this with the newly announced Champion Stadium, an area of the game that functions very similarly to the Elite Four and Champion challenges in the mainline games. It's also worth noting that all of these newly added areas are great recurring chances to nab a lot of gems, so take advantage of them whenever you can. Now there is one other big change that's been made to the game quite recently, and that is none other than the stamina system. Pokemon Masters was a bit unique in being a free-to-play mobile game that didn't limit your playtime in any way. So a lot of people fear that the stamina system would be a massive black eye on the game going into its first anniversary. In my opinion though, I don't find it to be that big of a deal. If anything, it makes the game more appealing to newcomers because the game isn't nearly as grindy or as much of a time sink as it used to be. Now I just think there are too many sync pairs and mechanics, you can't really ask new players to set aside several hours a day to grind for items. But now you get more rewards and less time, and also every sync pair's level cap is automatically unlocked all the way up to level 100 now, which is immensely helpful. Some people still have a preference for grinding though, and I totally understand that as well. If you put more work in, you naturally want to have better stuff than the guy who just started playing casually last week. It's certainly not a perfect system, there are many pros and cons to it, but keep in mind that we are still in the trial phase and the devs have already said that if people don't like it, they'll revert to the old system without stamina. A big con is that if there isn't an event going on, it feels like there's quite literally nothing to do. Having to wait 2 whole hours to play on a stage one time isn't too appealing. And realistically, you probably won't even be playing the stage, you'll just use a skip ticket if it's in the training area. Skip tickets are the one thing I think would actually work way better under the old system. As it stands right now, there's just not enough stamina in a day to negate the massive amounts of skip tickets you get. I actually tried playing exclusively with skip tickets for an entire week to drain my stamina, and by the end of the week I had more skip tickets than I did at the beginning. Skip tickets are a good idea to negate a lot of the pointless grinding, but in this limited system, they're actually a bit broken in my opinion. You can realistically skip every course, never play the game, and not have to worry about managing your tickets as it stands right now. The other big concern about the stamina system is the timed events that periodically occur. I think the rock-type egg event went smoother than expected because they significantly buffed the egg drop rates to compensate for stamina existing, but the real cracks in the system start to show up in the New World Dilemma event, which may as well be called the New Stamina System Dilemma. For a while now, legendary events have used this prize box feature to unlock progress, and I definitely think this shouldn't be tied to stamina in any way. It's already bad that you can waste heaps of stamina and potentially make no progress due to the random nature of the event, but keep in mind the Rock Egg event is running on top of this, and there are still the Sync Orb courses which you have to play daily to get the most out of. It's not a huge deal for someone like me personally since I've been playing every day, but for someone just now returning to the game, it's going to be really hard to make it through all of this with a limited amount of stamina. So on those fronts, either go back to the old unlimited system or just give us more stamina in one day so you actually have to manage your resources. Also, raising your player rank does almost nothing for you after a certain point because it doesn't speed up the rate at which you recover stamina. It just increases the maximum amount that you can accumulate at once. I'm at rank 40 now, and my stamina almost never fully recharges if I just log in twice a day, so at the very least, I think that's something that needs to be refined. Again, this is something that could potentially revert, so if this is an issue you feel strongly about, I urge you to use the player feedback system. Now, another big question surrounding mobile games is often how long will they last? We've already seen some mobile games like Pokemon Shuffle and Pokemon Duel stop getting updates or ceasing to function entirely. So far, the only Pokemon mobile game that has a guaranteed future is Pokemon Go. So with Masters, assuming the game continues to pull in a healthy amount of income every year, I have no clue how much they are currently making, by the way, we can assume based on the number of remaining sync pairs yet to be added that there's a good 2 to 3 years worth of new content to come. Now, how did I come up with that number? Well, it's pretty simple. I basically compiled a list of all the notable trainers from the mainline games who haven't appeared yet, including protagonists, gym leaders, villains, rivals, etc., and found that there are at least 80 to 90 notable characters who have yet to be added. Not counting the starting roster and the sync pairs added that were just variations of pre-existing characters like Signa suits or seasonal outfits, 35 new sync pairs were added in the last year. In fact, Cyrus and Palkia, who were just released as of me making this video, are sync pair number 100. And again, that number does not include trainer variations. So if they continue at the same rate, there should theoretically be 2 to 3 more years of new sync pairs left to add. And by that point, we'll more than likely be in Generation 9, and they'll probably be able to squeeze another year out of that alone. Keep in mind, they haven't even added any Generation 8 sync pairs into the game yet. And that's the bare minimum, to be honest. They've already added in the anime versions of Jesse, James, and Meowth, so there's a firm possibility that when they start running out of mainline game characters, they could just add more anime exclusive characters, like 8 different variations of Ash Ketchum with his aces from each region. And who knows, they could even dip their hands into a pool of the popular spin-off characters like Wes from Pokemon Coliseum, but odds are those probably wouldn't drum up as much hype for a lot of people, so that would probably be last resort content if anything. And if worse comes to worse, they can just perpetually release new outfits for old characters in a never-ending cycle. So I guess my point is, I wouldn't be as worried about Pokemon Masters fading away or running out of new content as much as I would about other Pokemon mobile games that aren't Pokemon Go. But again, that's only in assuming that they're turning a healthy profit from year to year. I'll just say it has a better chance of survival than most. So if you've been on the fence lately about getting back into Pokemon Masters because you're worried about the game just fading out of existence in a few months, I would say you don't have to worry much about that. In fact, between all the free gems they're giving away during the 1-year anniversary right now and the current Pokefair banner featuring Signa Suit Cynthia, now might be a better time than ever to get back into the game. If you don't know, Pokefairs actually have a 10% chance to roll 5-star units. So if you just click the 3000 gem option, you're more than likely going to pull something good. Of course, I fully understand that gachas aren't for everyone. A lot of people don't like the idea of their luck determining how well they can play the game. Wait, that's literally just regular Pokemon. What I meant to say was a lot of people don't like the idea of potentially having to spend money to make up for their bad luck to progress further in the game. But honestly, I would say that from my experience, this is a game that you can enjoy even without pulling super strong units. Of course, my judgment might be a bit biased as I consider myself to be a pretty lucky person. I mean, I'm a YouTuber, so I kinda have to be. But if you do what I just did where you hoard thousands of gems for months on end and have the willpower not to crack and spend them whenever a new banner rolls out and just spend them all at once on the new Pokefair banner, then you can pretty much will luck to work in your favor. In fact, when you reach 40,000 gems, you can just summon any sync pair of your choice. By the time I spent that money in the Pokefair, I basically had everyone I ever wanted. Like we touched on earlier, I think the rates in this game are generous enough to where you don't have to spend money to get the characters you want if you just play it smart and patiently. Regardless, if you're a big Pokemon fan, this is a good time killer if nothing else. It's not like Pokemon Go where you need to walk to do stuff, and it's honestly become one of my favorite Pokemon side games to mess around with. Hopefully the rest of the 1-year anniversary celebration doesn't disappoint. Well, anyway, that was about one of my longest scripted videos ever. I knew that putting a year's worth of content into one video was going to be a tall task, but thank you for making it to the end. I hope you enjoyed this review. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.